Per Thomas Gentle, the executive director for the National School Board Association, he stated in 2009-2010 school year, over 3 million children, kindergarten through 12th grade, were estimated to have lost instructional seat time due to out-of-school suspensions. Based on a survey that I've done in this class, I compiled some data. As you can see, 70% of the people in this class think out-of-school suspension should be used as a form of punishment. 65% of you are not satisfied with how schools addressed discipline issues in the schools. And only 30% of you are unsupportive of alternative method to keep kids in school. And for those of you that are not satisfied, that you were not satisfied with how schools address discipline, 57% of you do not support an alternative to out-of-school suspension. Out-of-school suspensions remove children from an environment where they are learning or they can receive rehabilitation services. This is creating a school-to-prison pipeline, and for that reason alone, I believe out-of-school suspension should be dramatically reduced or eliminated completely. In a journal by Michael Chamberlain for the New Hampshire Bar, he states out-of-school suspensions will make it more difficult for a child to master competencies, acquire the skills that will enable the child to obtain higher employment, and be more likely to draw on public money for health care or welfare, making it more costly for the state. Today I will tell you what an out-of-school suspension is, and why out-of-school suspensions are used, why out-of-school suspensions do not work, what other options are available instead of using out-of-school suspensions, and the success of those who have implemented alternatives to out-of-school suspensions. First, let's define out-of-school suspensions and find out why they're used. Per the Cumberland County Code of Student Conduct, they define out-of-school suspension as the exclusion of a student from school attendance for disciplinary purposes. Out-of-school suspensions are used for serious infractions, such as fighting, theft, bomb threats, drugs, possession of weapons, or the minor infractions such as truancy, disrupting class, dress code violations, profanity, cheating, or ridiculous infractions, such as those mentioned in an article entitled Suspending Hope by Brian Willoughby, who states that more than 60% of out-of-school suspensions were for minor misconduct. The kindergarten in Pennsylvania brought a toy axe to school because it was a part of his firefighter costume at Halloween time. He was suspended. The middle school teachers of New Haven, Connecticut, who suspend students for chewing gum, wearing hats, and forgetting to bring a pencil to class. Or from my own personal experience, where my son walked into class, had his cell phone in his back pocket, went to sit down, didn't want to crush his cell phone, so he simply moved his cell phone from his back pocket to his front pocket. Since his teacher seen it visually, suspended him for 3 days. Now let's take a look at why out-of-school suspensions do not work. Out-of-school suspensions do not work, and there are multiple reasons why. In a Time magazine article, Does Suspending Students Work? States, it simply gives kids a free day or two off, and it doesn't really feel like punishment. But more importantly, missing school means missing assignments. And per a report by the Public Schools of North Carolina from a joint legislative education oversight committee, they state statistics as 1 in 7 kids right here in North Carolina are suspended. When you have children that are suspended, you're going to see grades decline. And it increases students' detachment from the academic environment. And it creates frustration. So when they return, they just repeat the cycle. Out-of-school suspensions increase dropouts. In a journal entitled Out of School and Off Track, the Center for Civil Rights Remedies states that a normal dropout rate is 16%. But when you suspend a child just one time, that dropout rate increases to a staggering 32%. Children are also left at home alone because most parents cannot just take off work to be at home with their children when they're suspended. And rehabilitation services are not provided when a child is out on suspensions. So students' bad behavior is never actually addressed. So they just come back to school and they repeat that same bad behavior. Now I'll tell you about some alternatives to out-of-school suspension. There are many alternatives to out-of-school suspension, as per a journal by David Robinette entitled Alternatives to School Suspension. He states that several alternatives to out-of-school suspensions or expulsions should be included, but not limited to. Community service, and that means just community service right there on campus. They can do outdoor beautification projects, or community or campus betterment, or teacher, peer, or youth assistant programs right on school campus. They can require parents to attend class. This is the least utilized option because obviously you don't want to cause issues with a parent's employment. And then you also have temporary removal from class for the remainder of the class period. However, limits should be placed on this method to no more than once every 5 days. And then you have other means of correction, such as anger management, counseling, and behavior support plans. Now let us see what the success has been for those who have implemented alternatives to out-of-school suspensions. There have been many successes following schools that have implemented alternatives. The results where administrators are really working hard to change their school environment has been staggering. Garfield High School, which is in Los Angeles, went from 613 suspensions to just 1 in the first year of simply using tools and the discretion that has always been available to them, but now they are a shining example to other districts and even lawmakers. Per the Huffington Post, advocates seeking to reduce suspensions. Sorry. There. All right. Per the Department of Public Instruction website, Bald Creek Elementary School, right here in North Carolina, implemented the Positive Behavior Interventions Program, which is also known as PBIS. Now this doesn't eliminate using suspensions, but it enforces positive behavior so that eventually out-of-school suspensions won't be used. They had an obvious increase once they fully implemented the program in their tests, in their reading and math scores. Now to conclude, I have explained to you what out-of-school suspensions are and why out-of-school suspensions are used, why out-of-school suspensions do not work, and other options available instead of using out-of-school suspensions, and the success following schools that have implemented alternatives to out-of-school suspensions. Chief Justice Tanny Kentosaki said it best in an article entitled Out of Sight, Out of Mind. If we aren't responsible for our youth, if we don't keep them in school, if we don't help them become productive citizens, we are paving the way for entry not only into the juvenile justice system, but into the adult justice system as well. Any questions?